Izuku Midoriya often found himself lost in thought, particularly when it came to his sensei. He admired the way his mentor approached challenges with unwavering determination and a unique perspective. This admiration sometimes blurred the lines between reality and his imagination, leading him to daydream about their training sessions. During one particularly intense training day, Izuku felt a surge of motivation. He watched as his sensei demonstrated a new technique, the way they moved with precision and confidence. Izuku's heart raced, and he couldn't help but feel inspired. He approached his sensei, eager to learn more. "Sensei, how do you stay so focused?" Izuku asked, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. His sensei smiled, a warm and encouraging expression. "It's all about believing in yourself and your abilities, Izuku. You have to trust the process and keep pushing forward, no matter the obstacles." Izuku nodded, absorbing every word. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. As they continued their training, the bond between them grew stronger, filled with mutual respect and understanding. With each passing day, Izuku learned not just about heroics but also about the importance of mentorship and friendship. The journey ahead was filled with challenges, but with his sensei by his side, he felt ready to face anything. Chapter 1. Izuku stood on a rooftop at the age of 11, having only left a note for his mother. He felt a deep sadness, knowing he would hurt her, but he had been hurt himself. Memories of his mother shutting down his dreams echoed in his mind. In his note, he wrote, "I'm so sorry, Mom." He hoped she would understand. He could never hate her, but he felt a sense of loss that he wanted her to feel too. The note detailed his struggles and the challenges he faced with Katsuki Bakugo. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer to the ledge, placing his shoes and the note down carefully. His bag leaned against the edge as he climbed up. Suddenly, he heard a voice behind him. "Kid, step down onto the roof." The voice was gruff, and Izuku tensed. "I'm quirkless. Leave now. Don't waste your time on a nobody." He glanced over the edge and realized he was 7 stories up. The person behind him must have had a quirk to reach him so quickly. The man approached and extended his hand. "My name is Eraserhead. I don't care that you're quirkless. Please get down, kid." Izuku sensed the man's attempt to be soothing, though it wasn't very convincing. When he turned to look, he saw a striking figure with deep black eyes and hair, and he felt an unexpected connection. Eraserhead's hand was scarred and calloused, and Izuku found himself reaching for it, wanting to hold on. Once their hands met, he clung to the man and began to cry. "It's all right. Let's get you to the police station when you're calm. For now, just relax. It'll be okay." Eraserhead held the young boy, feeling a mix of concern and compassion. Aizawa, as he introduced himself, walked Izuku to the police station, where they called his mother. Half an hour later, Inko rushed in, worry etched on her face, but Izuku's attention remained on Aizawa, bombarding him with questions. Aizawa seemed flattered by the attention as Izuku expressed his eagerness to learn everything about him and apologized for the trouble he caused. Inko took Izuku's hand to leave, but he suddenly broke free and retrieved his notebook, holding out a blank page. "See, could I get your autograph, Eraser Aizawa-san?" Aizawa took the notebook and pen, writing Eraserhead before handing it back. "Here, kid. Stay out of trouble, you nearly gave your mother a heart attack." Izuku pouted slightly but nodded as he left with his mother, gazing at the signed page. Inko noticed the look in her son's eyes. "Izuku, sweetie, have I ever told you how I won over your father?" she asked, smiling fondly. Izuku shook his head, still captivated by the autograph. As Inko shared her story of determination, Izuku's excitement grew. "Mom, I found my love. He doesn't care about my quirk status. Can I please get out of school tomorrow to follow him? I need to know what he likes, what he hates, who loves him, so I can get rid of them. Please, Mom. I'll plan everything, I promise." Inko paused, then decided to support her son in his pursuits. Izuku hugged her tightly, then pulled out another notebook, titled, Plans for My Love No. 1, and began to strategize how to win over Aizawa. He spent the rest of the day planning, and when bedtime came, he fell asleep, determined to be stealthy in observing his love, who was a pro-hero. Chapter 2. As Izuku trained with All Might, he had less time to watch Shota, but that was alright, he would check at night. Dealing with the loud blonde was challenging, as it was clear how he felt about Izuku. But Izuku had already chosen his love, Aizawa Shota, the man who accepted him without regard for his quirk status. On the day of the entrance exam, All Might made him eat his hair, something Aizawa would never do. During the exam, Izuku used his newfound abilities to save as many people from the robots as he could and managed to take down the zero-pointer, despite injuring himself in the process. He sensed Aizawa's attention on him, which made him happy. However, weeks later, he overheard Aizawa complaining about Nizu placing Izuku in his class to a certain loud blonde pro-hero, who was also his boyfriend. Izuku thought about how he could help them break up. It might sadden Aizawa, but he would be there to comfort him. By the end of the year, he was determined to have Aizawa by his side. On the first day, he expected to be last in the rankings, and while it wasn't a logical strategy as Aizawa had suggested, he hoped to find kindness in his heart for the boyfriend he didn't know he had yet. After the test, Izuku learned he had come in last but had only broken one finger, which he considered a victory. It meant Aizawa saw his potential, and he would get to stay in the class. He smiled widely at his teacher, then Katsuki started running at him, yelling about how he was a quirkless loser. His love saved him from the loud blonde's wrath, and he hid behind Aizawa, pretending to be scared of Bakugo. Keikaken. I'm just a late bloomer. Why are you so mean? His love gave him a pass and told him to go to the nurse's office while he dealt with Bakugo. He moved slowly, staying away from Bakugo. Once he was out of sight, however, he started skipping along to the office where Recovery Girl healed his finger and bandaged it. As he started leaving the school, the Zero-Gravity Girl and Engine Calf Boy approached him. They began talking, and he figured they'd make a good cover for him to seem innocent and kind, so he didn't tell them to go away, even though they were a bit annoying. At the USJ, he watched in horror as his adopted brother hurt his love. He did the only thing he could do, tackle him to the ground and quietly threatened to tell their mother before being flung off. Just then, the Nomu was punched into the sky by All Might, and Tamura retreated. Izuku visited the hospital every day until Aizawa was discharged, which was just one day later. He wanted to make sure Aizawa was okay until he was fully healed. When Aizawa stepped into class covered in bandages, Izuku offered to help with anything he needed, and everyone else did the same. Thankfully, they were all good covers. Over time, he started flinching around All Might, especially when a camera was around and when Aizawa was present. Even during training outside of school, he flinched too. Keep the habit. Aizawa noticed and pulled Izuku aside to ask about it. Problem child, are you okay? You've been flinching around All Might a lot. Izuku turned on his innocent persona, stuttering and stumbling over his words. He let the tears flow as he started sobbing about how All Might made him uncomfortable in private. He went into detail, and Aizawa comforted him as best he could. Once Izuku stopped crying, he straightened up and spoke again. I said too much. I need to go. He ran off, leaving Aizawa alone. He stopped interacting with Aizawa during class but still watched him after school. Aizawa let a few days pass before pulling him aside again. Midoriya, I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable, but I'm having my detective friend start a case on All Might. He'll need a statement next week. Izuku nodded, telling Aizawa he couldn't hide from All Might for the weekend because he knew where he lived. Aizawa offered that he could stay at his apartment if his mother was okay with it. After texting her and getting her approval, he told Aizawa. That Friday, he went home, got a bag, blanket, and pillow, and headed to Aizawa's apartment. Aizawa let him in, clearly feeling awkward, but Izuku didn't mind. It was a one-bedroom apartment since he didn't live with Yamada. Izuku asked where he'd be sleeping, and Aizawa offered his bed, saying he could take the couch. Izuku shook his head. I can sleep on the couch, Sensei, it's no issue. Aizawa immediately shook his head. I'll take the couch, you're a kid, you don't need back problems. Izuku frowned but nodded. Can we at least watch a movie after dinner? My mom does that with me, and I think it'd make me more comfortable. He looked at his feet and fidgeted with his hands, appearing nervous to ask. Aizawa placed his hand on Izuku's head. Sure kid, we can do that. Izuku looked up at Aizawa with a big smile. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei. The older man chuckled. Just Aizawa is fine outside of school and work. Izuku nodded quickly. Thank you, Aizawa, he amended, dropping any honorific. Aizawa nodded. We'll have to order out for dinner since I can't cook. Izuku knew he couldn't, which is why he learned as soon as he found out. I can. My mom taught me how. Aizawa smiled at the 15-year-old. That's a nice offer, kid, but it's fine, you need to relax. Izuku nodded. At least let me cook for you tomorrow as a thank you. Aizawa shook his head. It's alright, kid. You don't need to cook anything for me. Izuku pouted but nodded and went over to the couch, sitting down. Aizawa sat next to him. So what do you want to have for dinner? Izuku pretended to think for a moment, already knowing what he'd say. I'm not too picky. Anything that's cheap and good is totally fine with me. Aizawa nodded and ordered something online, waiting with Izuku for it to arrive. What do you want to drink? I have water, coffee, and tea. Izuku smiled. Some water would be nice, thank you. Aizawa got up and poured some water for Izuku and coffee for himself. Here, kid. He handed Izuku the glass of water and drank from his coffee. Once they finished dinner, Aizawa turned on a movie, and Izuku pretended to fall asleep, resting his head on Aizawa's lap. Aizawa tried to pull him off, but Izuku nuzzled into him, pretending to be asleep. Aizawa sighed, feeling conflicted about the situation. He was concerned for his student, who had come to stay safe, and yet here they were. Izuku flipped himself, groaning in his sleep and cuddling up to Aizawa. Aizawa let out a sigh of relief and fell asleep, feeling the warmth of Izuku beside him. Izuku listened to Aizawa's breathing and smiled, feeling a sense of comfort in their unusual situation. He sighed softly, wishing it was Aizawa beside him. Once he settled down, he cuddled up next to Aizawa, feeling content as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Izuku found himself pinned under Aizawa, feeling a familiar warmth against him. Aizawa shifted slightly, and Izuku pretended to be asleep, enjoying the moment. Aizawa stirred and, realizing what had happened, looked at Izuku with surprise. Izuku, acting as if he was just waking up, asked, "What's the matter?" He followed Aizawa's gaze and gasped in realization. Aizawa, looking a bit flustered, apologized, explaining that it was an accident. Izuku reassured him, saying, "It's okay. It happens. I only brought one pair of pajamas, and this was it." Aizawa offered to let Izuku borrow some of his clothes while his were washing. Izuku nodded, appreciating the gesture. Aizawa then suggested that Izuku could shower first, stepping into his room to wait. Izuku happily went to the shower, turning on the water and waiting for it to warm up. After showering, he wrapped a towel around himself and stepped into the hallway to retrieve his clothes from Aizawa's room. Aizawa, hearing the bathroom door open, stepped into the hallway and saw Izuku in just a towel. He quickly turned away, remembering to give Izuku privacy. Izuku giggled and ran into Aizawa's room, feeling a rush of happiness. Once dressed, he headed to the kitchen, where he started cooking omurice for Aizawa. Aizawa emerged from the bathroom, his hair damp, and was greeted by the delicious smell of food. He asked what Izuku was making, and Izuku nervously replied, "Omurice, is that okay?" Aizawa nodded, but insisted that Izuku didn't need to cook for him. Izuku pouted, explaining it was his way of showing gratitude. "It's okay, Aizawa. It was an accident," Izuku said, trying to ease the tension. They enjoyed their meal together, and Izuku took the opportunity to make small talk, asking Aizawa about his weekends. Aizawa shared stories from his past, but Izuku noticed he avoided mentioning his second year, which piqued his curiosity. After finishing their meal, they settled on the couch, which had been tidied up. Izuku expressed his nervousness about talking to Detective Tsukachi, who was a friend of All Might. Aizawa reassured him, saying that while Tsukachi was friends with All Might, he didn't tolerate any form of harassment. As they continued watching TV, Izuku leaned into Aizawa's comforting presence. He asked if Aizawa remembered him from 3 years ago, and Aizawa confirmed he did, recalling how Izuku had been struggling at that time. Just then, a loud voice interrupted them as Hisashi entered, announcing his arrival. Izuku flinched at the noise, prompting Aizawa to grumble about the volume. Hisashi, noticing the tension, asked if they had ordered food. Izuku shyly mentioned that he had made omuris. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, Izuku asked Aizawa if they could talk privately. Aizawa agreed, leading Izuku into his bedroom. Izuku pretended to be upset, expressing his fear of Hisashi and his discomfort around him. Aizawa quickly reassured him, promising to handle the situation. Aizawa spoke to Hisashi, explaining that Izuku was feeling anxious and needed some space. Hisashi, though initially unhappy, understood and left. Aizawa returned to find Izuku still a bit teary-eyed, and he offered him a tissue and a comforting hug. Izuku felt grateful for Aizawa's support, and as he calmed down, he decided to wash his face. Afterward, he returned to find Aizawa had made him some calming tea. Izuku smiled, thanking Aizawa for his kindness. For asking him to leave, the Erasure hero nodded, "It's no problem. You're here so you could be comfortable, and I don't want to make you any more uncomfortable than I already did earlier this morning." Izuku nodded slowly, and the rest of the day went calmly. He laid in Aizawa's bed wearing his love's clothes, then got up and shuffled into the living room. "Aizawa. I can't sleep alone. I'm afraid of All Might finding where I am and taking what he wants." Aizawa got up, grabbing a pillow and blanket, following him to his room. Izuku laid down, and Aizawa set the blanket and pillow on the floor. Izuku waited until Shota was asleep before pretending to roll off the bed and onto the older man, clinging to him tightly for the rest of the night. Izuku had been awake since he felt Aizawa beside him, but he decided to embrace the feeling of his teacher's presence. If that meant pretending to be asleep, then he was going to act asleep. Aizawa tried to pull away, but Izuku shifted, wanting to feel the warmth and comfort. He smiled softly, enjoying the moment. Aizawa, feeling a mix of confusion and concern, quickly got up, unsure of what to do next. He went to the bathroom to collect himself, feeling overwhelmed. When he returned to the bedroom, he found Izuku getting dressed. "I'm going to shower, Aizawa," he said with a smile, walking past him into the bathroom. Aizawa stared at the bathroom door, perplexed. Had the kid somehow not noticed? There was so much going on, but maybe Izuku thought he had just had a rough night. Izuku's plan was going perfectly. He had learned a lot about psychology from online courses his mom had paid for over the years. He knew that the encounters he and Aizawa had would leave him yearning for a partner, and with Hisashi not approaching Aizawa while Izuku was around, he would be the first choice. He just had to stay close to Aizawa. After his shower, Izuku made some tea and coffee for Aizawa, humming to himself as he waited for the older man to finish. When Aizawa stepped into the kitchen, he was surprised to see a hot cup of coffee waiting for him. "Did you sleep well, Aizawa?" Izuku asked, sitting at the table. Aizawa nodded, sipping the coffee and letting the caffeine energize him. "Thanks for the coffee, kid." Izuku smiled and nodded. "Of course. Anything for the man who's giving me a safe place to stay for the weekend." He emphasized anything, hoping Aizawa would understand the underlying meaning. Aizawa coughed slightly, and Izuku smiled wider, knowing he had succeeded in making the older man flustered. So what are we doing for breakfast? Ordering in, going out. Aizawa suggested, right, we can go out for breakfast. I know a good place. He grabbed his wallet and looked at Izuku, who was ready to go. They walked to a cat cafe, where a few cats approached Aizawa, climbing on him. He ordered something for both of them, and they found a booth in the corner. The cats curled up on Aizawa, making Izuku slightly jealous, but he would never harm an animal. As they ate breakfast, Izuku listened happily to Aizawa's stories. A cat curled up in his lap, and as he pet it, he saw an opportunity to get Aizawa to comfort him. He feigned distress when the cat nipped at him, playing up the moment. Be bad cat, he said, trying to pull his hand away. Aizawa helped shoo the cat away, wiping Izuku's tears and putting a hand on his head. Hey, the cat's gone, you're okay. He took out a band-aid and placed it over the bite. Thank you, Aizawa. Izuku sniffled, rubbing a finger over the bite. Shota smiled at him. Not an issue, problem child. Izuku smiled wider. Do you think you could train and tutor me after school whenever you're free? Aizawa thought for a moment. Yeah, I can do that, Midoriya. Thank you, sir. Izuku replied, rubbing the bite a bit more. He finished his food while Aizawa took his time, sharing stories about his childhood cat, Stinky. Aizawa's apartment didn't allow pets, which was why Stinky wasn't with him now. After finishing their meal, Aizawa walked around with Izuku, listening to him excitedly rant about his favorite heroes. As well as what he and his friends had been up to since the USJ incident. He smiled and laughed with him when All Might approached them. Midoriya Shounen. You weren't at training yesterday or at your house. What happened? Izuku shyly hid behind Aizawa, shaking slightly. Aizawa glared at All Might while using his quirk. All Might, I'll have you know that Midoriya Izuku is currently in the process of accusing you of harassment. You will not be training with him or seeing him anytime soon. He stood protectively in front of Midoriya. All Might raised his hands in a placating gesture. Now, Aizawa-san, there's no need for you to be like that. I've never said anything inappropriate to the boy. Aizawa's glare intensified. That's not what the camera footage and the victim say. Look at how he's shaking. Izuku clung to Aizawa's arm, trembling and looking down at the ground. He was shaking from holding back laughter, not from fear. He could easily handle the loud blonde in front of them, but he needed him to help him win over his love. Shota glared at All Might. Leave. And don't talk to Midoriya ever again. If I catch you even looking at him, I won't hesitate to make sure you regret it. Toshinori backed away and left them alone. Izuku knew that wouldn't be the last time he saw All Might. In fact, he looked forward to it. He couldn't wait to see his love stand up for him again. Thank you, Aizawa, he sniffled, a few fake tears running down his face. Aizawa nodded. It'll be okay, problem child. I'll protect you. Izuku smiled at him. Thank you so much, Aizawa. He hugged him tightly. Shota patted his head and stood with him for a moment. We should get back to my apartment, okay kid? Izuku let go and nodded, blushing slightly to give off an innocent and flustered vibe. Sorry I hugged you so tightly, sir. He looked down at the ground, and Aizawa sighed. Kid, you didn't do anything wrong. Izuku nodded and started walking with Shota toward his apartment. So I guess I'm going home now, he spoke once they were inside the apartment, starting to gather his things. Shota nodded. Yeah, I'm sure your mom will want you home in a few hours. Izuku nodded. So what are we going to do until then? The Erasure hero thought for a moment, then shrugged. I'm not sure. Do you want to watch TV? My partner recommended a show earlier. Izuku shook his head. There's a documentary on underground heroes that I've been watching recently, could we watch that? Shota smiled and nodded. Sure, anything you want, kiddo. He smiled at him and sat on the couch as Izuku turned on the documentary. Once it was over, it was time for Izuku to leave. Thank you again for having me, Aizawa, he bowed once he reached the door to Inko's apartment. Aizawa nodded. It wasn't an issue, problem child. Midoriya smiled at the nickname and went inside after hugging Shota. I'll see you at school tomorrow. Izuku spent the rest of his Sunday telling his mother all about how well his love treated him. He comforted me when I started crying and even asked his boyfriend to leave for the weekend because I told him I was uncomfortable. Inko smiled sweetly. I'm so proud of you, son. You saw what you wanted and went after it. Just like me and your father, although it was easier for us to get together since we're so like-minded. You have to work hard for this man. I know you'll get him to realize he loves you as much as you love him. Izuku nodded, determined. I know, I just need to separate him and his boyfriend, come between them. I got him to agree to train and tutor me after school so I can spend more time alone with him. I'm happy for you, Izuku. She sipped her tea calmly. You should visit your father and adoptive brother soon, it's getting dark, and they'll be waiting for you. I told your father's informant that you'd visit tonight. Izuku smiled. Thanks, Mom. I'll go once I've finished my tea. Any news from Uncle or Cousin Kai? Inko shook her head. I haven't heard a word from them since they took in your second cousin. I'm so worried. You know what Kai had been suggesting to your uncle? Izuku nodded grimly. I'll visit Dad and see if they've heard anything from them. He finished his tea. I love you. I'll see you later tonight. He pulled his hoodie over his head, tucked his hair into the hood, put on his black shoes, and left the house. Once he arrived at the bar, he took his hood off and walked over to the bar. Hey Kuro, any luck with those memories yet? There's gotta be something that'll help. Kurojiri sighed. No, Master Izuku, nothing yet, Izuku frowned. Well, that's a shame. I wonder what kind of person you were. Shigaraki walked into the bar and sat on a stool. Izuku. He muttered in acknowledgement. Hey Tomo and I. He grinned. If you ever step in the direction of my love again, I'll make sure you regret it, okay? Shigaraki sighed. Fine. It's not my fault that you both irritate me so much. Izuku smiled. Great. Hey Dad, have you heard anything from Uncle or Cousin Kai? He looked at the TV that said, sound only, on it. A deep voice came from the TV. No, I haven't heard anything from my informants or from them directly. Why? Izuku frowned. Mom's really worried. And to be honest, I am too. I'm sure the pros will start looking into them soon due to the increase in drags being sold on the black market. That is concerning. I'll send word to your Uncle Naomi. We'll let you know if he responds. All for One spoke up from his end of the screens. Now, tell me all about this man you've been pursuing. I heard he's an underground hero who's all about logic and fought Tamura and pretty much won. Shigaraki growled angrily. He did not. His quirk is one huge cheat code. I managed to disintegrate his elbow, but that was it. Izuku glared at him. You sent your pet Nomu after him. He almost got permanent damage to his eyes. He needs those, you immature wannabe villain. You can hardly call yourself a proper villain with how you act, and I'm training to be a hero. Not to mention how you didn't think about how I need All Might for just a little longer before you can deal with him. Oh shut up, I'm sick and tired of hearing about this love of yours. He doesn't see you as anything more than a student. Good luck with that, Shigaraki said as he scratched at his neck. Izuku lunged for the villain, but Kurojiri was quicker, warping him to the other side of the bar. No fighting. Master Izuku, weren't you about to tell Master All for One about the person you love? Izuku grinned happily. Right. Thanks, Giri. Dad, he's the best man in the world. He has the prettiest black hair and black eyes, and his name is so gorgeous too. Shota Aizawa, doesn't it sound nice? He noticed Kurogiri's mist flickering, especially when he mentioned his love's name. Hey Kuro, you good? Do you know something about him that I don't? He turned his head to Kurogiri, who was now looking at the bar. I knew him, Master Izuku. Kurogiri's mist flickered more, revealing a bit of skin underneath. Great, Izuku, you broke him, Shigaraki said, glaring at Kurogiri. Oboro. Shirakumo, Izuku beamed. That's awesome. But he's never mentioned you before, though he did say he had 3 friends back when he was at UA. He never said the third friend's name, though. He began to mutter, and Shigaraki approached him, ready to hit him on the head when Kurogiri reached out to create a warp gate, sending Shigaraki's hand through it to the other side of the bar. Calm yourself, Shigaraki. Shigaraki scratched his neck again, frowning at Oboro. He's mumbling. I can't stand his mumbling. Izuku stuck his tongue out at him. Oh, cry about it, you big man child. Hey Shirakumo, can you tell me about Shota as a teenager? Shirakumo shook his head. Sorry, Master Izuku. I don't remember much. Just my name and that I knew him. I'll let you know if I remember anything else. Izuku nodded. Okay, oh. Dad. You'll never guess what happened this weekend while I spent it with Shota. He excitedly recounted his weekend, a huge smile on his face. After a few hours, he glanced at the time. Crap, I gotta get home, I have school tomorrow. Bye, Dad. Bye, Shirakumo. He quickly left, pulling up his hood, and ran home, going to bed with a smile. The next day, he woke up and got ready for school. Bye, Mom, I'm leaving now. Inko smiled back. Okay, Izuku, stay safe and out of trouble. Don't get hurt again, you have your sports festival soon. Izuku nodded. I know, bye, Mom. He walked out of the house and started on his way to school. On the way, he met Uraraka and Ida, walking the rest of the way with them. Uraraka looked at Izuku. Hey Deku, how come you didn't text us at all this weekend? Ida nodded in agreement. I was wondering the same. Did something happen? Izuku shook his head. No, but also kind of. It's hard to explain, and I don't think I can tell you too right now. I'm sorry. Uraraka looked at him, surprised. It's okay. You can tell us when you're ready. Ida added, yes, especially if it's something personal. Izuku nodded. I know, I just need some time to get it all sorted out. They nodded in understanding. Well, we're here for you, Midoriya. Izuku smiled at them as they entered the classroom, parting to sit at their desks. Aizawa didn't look at Izuku at all that day. He was still embarrassed about what had happened over the weekend and had to train Izuku after school too. When lunch break arrived, he nearly groaned as Izuku approached him, telling his friends he'd probably see them in the next class. Hi Aizawa-sensei. I was wondering if I could stay with you during lunch since that's when he usually wants to talk to me alone. Izuku knew his love would feel bad and allow him to stay for lunch. Aizawa sighed and nodded. Of course, Midoriya-san, you can stay for lunch. Izuku smiled nervously. Thank you so much, Aizawa-sensei. He sat at his desk, quickly eating, then asked to be excused to the restroom. Aizawa nearly chuckled. Midoriya-san, you don't need to ask, we're not in class, and you aren't in lunchtime detention. Izuku quickly nodded. Right, I know that, Aizawa-sensei, it just felt weird going without asking. He got up and left the room, heading to the bathroom but not actually using it. He just wanted a moment alone from everyone, even his love. Just then, All Might entered. Young Midoriya. I wanted to talk to you about you know what, but I couldn't approach you with that homeroom teacher of yours breathing down my neck. I know you're in here. Izuku was in the stall furthest from the door. All Might began kicking down the stall doors. Izuku started shaking. He had some training under his belt, but it wasn't nearly enough against All Might, who had mastered that very same quirk decades before he was born. All Might's process was slow and intimidating. After kicking down 3 doors, he frowned and stopped being careful, tearing the stall doors off and throwing them aside. When he reached Izuku's stall, he accidentally threw the door right on Izuku's head, knocking him unconscious. Sheet, All Might muttered under his breath as he tore a strip of fabric from the boy's shirt to use as a makeshift bandage for his head. He didn't want his successor to meet such an unfortunate fate. Unfortunately, a student passing by heard the commotion in the bathroom. Wanting to impress the hero course teachers, they ran to the nearest pro, Aizawa, who rushed to the bathroom and used his quirk on All Might. Get away from my student. He wrapped his bindings around All Might and swung him to the other side of the room, holding Midoriya's unconscious body close while glaring at All Might. I'm sure someone else is on their way since I told the student to get another teacher just in case. Present Mike sprinted in and widened his eyes at the scene. Can you give me a rundown on the situation here? Aizawa never broke his gaze from All Might. He ripped off all the stall doors and knocked Midoriya out. I'm assuming he started undressing him too, by the looks of the poor kid. He let Hisashi take the capture weapon that was restraining All Might so he could tie it up securely. We're holding you in custody until the police arrive based on what I've witnessed. The Midoriyas will likely seek a restraining order against you, which is the sensible thing to do. Once the police arrived and All Might was taken away for questioning, Izuku found himself lying on the bed in Recovery Girl's office, slowly waking up. What happened? He murmured. Recovery Girl approached him. I'm tired of seeing you, but this time it isn't your fault. You have a terrible concussion, I'm afraid. No more training for at least a month. Izuku nodded slowly, sighing sadly. Recovery Girl continued, you may also have trouble writing, so ask those around you to take notes for you. That doesn't mean you can slack off, though. Izuku nodded again, attempting to sit up but feeling woozy. His arms gave way, and he fell back onto the pillow, his head throbbing painfully. He curled up slightly. Inko rushed into the room, genuinely worried. Izuku, my goodness. Are you okay? I heard you have a concussion. She frowned deeply and took his hand. Izuku mumbled, too loud. Inko quickly apologized in a quieter voice and stayed with her son for the rest of the day. Aizawa entered a few hours later after giving a statement to the police. Midoriya-san, are you feeling any better? He asked. Izuku shook his head slowly. No, feels like I got hit over the head with a door. He was quiet and clearly drifting back into unconsciousness. Aizawa nodded, I've had my fair share of concussions too, kid. It'll get better after a while. Izuku slowly nodded, Mom. Do you? Dad know? Inko nodded, yes, I did. I'm sure he's furious. He's never liked All Might, and I'm sure this will make it worse, but All Might deserves it for what he did to you. Aizawa nodded in agreement, and then Izuku fell asleep, feeling comforted that All Might would finally face consequences and that his family was there to protect him. The next time Izuku woke up, he was in a hospital, with his mom beside him, her phone out. It said, sound only, on the screen, indicating she was talking to his father. Mom. Are you talking to Dad? Inko nodded, yes, baby. He's going to have Tamura warp into All Might's cell and take care of him. Izuku nodded, thanks, Dad. Tell Tomu and I say thanks. The deep voice he recognized as his father's came from the phone, I will, Izuku. Kurojiiri says hello. Izuku groaned, his name is Shirakumo, Dad. He was friends with Shota. All for one side, sure, whatever his name is, he says hi. Izuku sighed, okay, Dad. Tell him I say hi too. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Shota, asking to come in. Come in, Izuku said. His love walked into the room and frowned at his condition. Still hurting? Izuku nodded slowly. Dad, I have to go. My teacher is here to visit. I'll talk to you once I'm discharged. All for one, or Hisashi Midoriya in the presence of others, sighed, okay, Izuku. I'll talk to you then. The screen on Inko's phone returned to her normal background. Aizawa spoke up, so that was your father? Izuku nodded, and Shota seemed confused. He's never come to the parent-teacher meetings. Izuku explained, he's been stuck in America for work for the past few years. Aizawa nodded, do you keep him updated on everything? Izuku replied, yeah, he likes hearing me rant about things that happen at UA. I never tell him anything we have to keep secret, though. I have an older brother too, but he went with him. Aizawa nodded, that must have been hard. Izuku agreed, it was, especially for Mom. Inko had left the room to give Izuku and Shota some space to talk. He should be coming home soon, though. I can't wait to show him how much I've grown and how strong I've gotten. I got my fascination with quirks from him. He encouraged me to write down all my analysis in my notebooks. He smiled, he doesn't like heroes too much, but he supports me and my efforts to become one. Aizawa asked, why doesn't he like heroes? Izuku shrugged, I'm not sure. It had something to do with my uncle. Yoichi. I don't really know his name, I never met him, and Dad doesn't talk about him much. Aizawa nodded, Midoriya, what exactly happened in the bathroom with All Might? Izuku took a breath, well. I went to the bathroom to get away from everything for a moment, so I went to the stall furthest from the door. Next thing I know, All Might is kicking the stall doors down, then he started picking them up and throwing them at the toilets. When he got to mine, the last thing I saw was his glare before I got hit over the head with the door. Izuku began to shake, on the verge of tears. Aizawa placed a comforting hand on his back. It's okay. He's been arrested now. He's been interrogated and will be put on trial. You'll have to testify, but that will be the last time you see him. Izuku nodded and hugged Aizawa, crying into his shoulder. Aizawa hugged him back gently. It'll be okay, problem child. I don't say that lightly. Izuku nodded, and then the door opened to reveal the entirety of Class 1A. He pulled away from Aizawa and sniffled, what are you guys doing here? Denki was the first to speak, loudly. Midoriya. We heard about what happened with All Might. Are you alright? Izuku was about to respond when Aizawa cut in. Kaminari, keep your voice down. This is a hospital, and Midoriya has a concussion. Denki frowned, sorry, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa glared, it's Eraserhead outside of school. Izuku stared, confused. But you said earlier, Aizawa gave him a look that silenced him. Never mind, Eraserhead. Izuku laid back in his bed, and Ida spoke, so, how are you feeling, Midoriya? Izuku sighed, pretty terrible, to be honest. Getting hit over the head with a stall door by someone with a strength quirk can do that. Uraraka nodded, I'm surprised you aren't dead. Izuku agreed, me too. If it's alright with you all, I'd rather just sleep for a while longer. He looked to Aizawa, silently asking him to stay as the students began to leave. Aizawa nodded, I'll leave once you fall asleep, problem child. Izuku smiled softly and started to drift off again. When he woke up, his mother was where Aizawa had been sitting. The doctor said you could go home once you woke up. School is out for a few days, though. Izuku nodded slowly and sat up as a doctor entered, performed a physical examination, and then cleared him to go home. Alright, Mr. Midoriya. Midoriya was finally free to go home. The doctor had advised him to take a month off from hero work, and as he got dressed, he felt a mix of relief and concern. Once home, he opened the class group chat and updated everyone about his discharge, letting them know he wouldn't be training for a while. He also reached out to Aizawa. When Aizawa received Midoriya's message, he felt a wave of happiness but also concern for his student. He quickly replied, asking about Midoriya's training. Midoriya responded that he couldn't train for a month. Aizawa assured him he would inform the other teachers and let them know that Ida would be taking his notes during that time. Midoriya thanked him, appreciating the support. After their conversation, Midoriya felt tired and fell back asleep. When he woke up, he found apple slices on his bedside table, a thoughtful gesture from his mother. He joined her in the living room, where she mentioned that she had asked Mitsuki to arrange for Katsuki to walk him to school. Midoriya acknowledged his mother's concern, promising to do his best to ignore Katsuki's presence. Inko expressed her regret over the recent events, revealing her shock at All Might's actions. Midoriya shared his feelings, noting that at least he had a reason to stay close to his love and keep Katsuki's boyfriend away. Inko smiled, glad to see her son making the best of a difficult situation. As they talked, Midoriya expressed his worries about the upcoming sports festival and whether he would be allowed to participate. Inko reassured him that if he could write properly by the time of the festival, she would speak to his teachers about it. Grateful, Midoriya hugged her tightly. After finishing his meal, he mentioned he was going to take a shower. Inko reminded him to take baths instead, to avoid any risk of getting dizzy. He agreed and promised to visit his father the next day. Once in his room, he changed into his pajamas and took a bath. He messaged Aizawa to let him know he was going to bed and wouldn't be available for a while. Aizawa almost sent a more affectionate message but caught himself, attributing it to habit. The next morning, Midoriya woke up and shuffled into the kitchen, where Inko was preparing katsudon. He shared his plans to talk to his dad and Tomo and II that day. Inko encouraged him to make a real friend this school year, someone he could confide in about his feelings. Midoriya agreed, determined to try. After breakfast, he got dressed and went to find Tomo and II. When he found Shigaraki, he hugged him and asked about his plans for All Might. Shigaraki mentioned waiting until after All Might's sentencing for better publicity. Midoriya inquired about new recruits, and Shigaraki mentioned starting with Hero Killer Stain. Midoriya then let Shigaraki and his dad know he was okay before leaving the building. He wandered around the mall, contemplating which of his classmates might make a good friend. He dismissed several options until he considered Todoroki, who seemed quiet and distant. Eventually, he stumbled upon a shop selling hero merchandise. He searched for anything related to Eraserhead and found a gray scarf resembling Shota's capture weapon. Satisfied with his purchase, he headed to the food court for lunch. While waiting for his food to be prepared, Izuku spotted Aizawa exiting an art store nearby. He had visited that store a few times for sketchbooks and pencils, but he was surprised to see Aizawa carrying canvases and a bag that likely contained paints and brushes. Izuku had never known Aizawa to paint before. Curious, Izuku approached him. "Hey Aizawa," he called out with a smile. Aizawa nodded in response, "Hello Midoriya, how are you feeling?" Izuku shrugged, "Better, but still not great." "What's all that for?" He gestured to Aizawa's supplies. "Oh, I'm just revisiting an old hobby, nothing too interesting," Aizawa replied. Izuku's smile widened, "Cool. What are you going to paint?" Aizawa shrugged again, "Not sure yet, probably something that's been on my mind for a while." Izuku nodded, "That makes sense. I hope it turns out well." He noticed the gray scarf Aizawa wore, different from the All Might themed one he usually donned in cold weather. "Thank you, Midoriya, I appreciate that," Aizawa said. Just then, Izuku received a message from his mom. I have to get home now. Have a nice day, Aizawa." Aizawa nodded as Izuku left for home. "Mom! I'm back," he called out. Inko smiled from the kitchen, "I'm in here." Izuku entered the kitchen and hugged her. "Hey, I saw Aizawa at the mall today. I found out he likes to paint." Inko beamed, "That's great, honey. Did you get a chance to talk to your father at all?" Izuku shook his head, "No, he's busy working on something." Inko nodded, he's always been a busy man. Her smile faltered slightly. Yeah, I'll visit him again tomorrow. Maybe I'll get to talk to him then. Izuku placed a hand on hers, and she nodded slowly. You grew up way too soon, Izuku. I wish you could go back to being my little boy so I could tuck you into bed and play heroes with you. Izuku chuckled softly, shaking his head. You know I can't do that, Mom. I've worked too hard to get where I am today. Inko sighed, I know, but I miss the days when we could all just be together. I understand how important your father's work is, and I can't interrupt it. He's too close to a breakthrough for me to get in the way. I'll just have to celebrate with him when he does. Izuku nodded and hugged Inko tightly. I love you, Mom, and I know he does too. Inko smiled, you've become so smart, but it's a shame no schools besides Aldera would take you. Izuku frowned, yeah, I hate this quirkish society. I can't wait for Dad to change things, but by then, I hope to have Aizawa by our side. I don't want to force him to accept us, he can learn to think like we do. He's smart. Inko nodded, you chose a good man to love, Izuku, and I can't wait to meet him formally. The next day, Izuku arrived at school early and greeted Aizawa with a smile. Good morning, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa acknowledged him with a nod, good morning, Midoriya. Did you have a nice day off yesterday? Any updates on your condition? Izuku's smile grew wider, I'm feeling a lot better now. I still have a headache, but my writing is improving. Aizawa nodded, I'm glad to hear that, but remember, nothing for another month. Principal Nizu is pushing the sports festival back to give us time to find a new heroics teacher. It also gives you time to heal so you have the same chance as everyone else. Izuku smiled and bowed, thank you so much, Aizawa-sensei. Please let Principal Nizu know I appreciate it. Aizawa nodded, of course, it was just a logical decision. He casually concealed his embarrassment at the praise from his student. Then he began to wonder why he felt flustered at all. Aizawa-sensei. Is everything okay? Did I say something wrong? Izuku asked, looking concerned. Aizawa took a breath, no, you didn't say anything wrong, problem child. You should go sit with your friends now. Izuku nodded, right, thank you again, Aizawa-sensei. He smiled widely and walked off happily. Izuku knew Aizawa had been instrumental in pushing back the sports festival, even though Nizu had been against it. He understood Aizawa wanted to heal and watch him grow. He sat with his friends, chatting until class started. They asked if he was feeling okay, having seen the news. Izuku's smile faded as he began to stutter, well, I'm doing better physically. Mom's getting me some sessions with Hound Dog. He rubbed his arm nervously. His friends immediately reassured him, asking if he wanted space or to talk, but he declined. Both offers, glancing at Todoroki, who seemed lost in thought. Todoroki-kun. Are you alright? Izuku asked nervously. Todoroki looked over, can I talk to you in private, Midoriya-kun? Izuku nodded slowly, after class, yeah. He fidgeted nervously until Aizawa started the lesson. As soon as class ended, Todoroki took Izuku into the hallway. Do you think you could get my father arrested? He asked. Izuku was taken aback, what? Why would you want my help with something like that? Todoroki replied, because you got All Might, the #1 hero, arrested. Surely you can get an abusive person arrested too. Izuku considered it for a moment as Todoroki handed him a piece of paper. Let me know when you make up your mind. Izuku nodded slowly as Todoroki left him in the hallway. After school, Izuku went to the bar and sat down in front of Shirakumo. Any memories? Anything at all? He asked. Oboro shook his head, my apologies, Master Izuku. The only thing I can remember at the moment is a cat. Sushi, I think their name was. Izuku sighed, it's alright, Shirakumo. Don't worry, I'm going to get Dad to help you get your memories back. He turned to the TV. "Dad, I need to talk to you. Can you warp me over?" Suddenly, a black goop emerged from Izuku's throat and enveloped him, a sensation he always found unsettling. Izuku struggled to catch his breath until the haze cleared from his vision, revealing that he was now in the same room as his father. "Hey, Dad. I have a small favor to ask you." All for One looked at his son with a smile. "What can I do for you, Izuku?" Izuku's expression shifted as he replied, "Fix Oboro." All for One's demeanor changed, surprise evident in his reaction. "Izuku, what do you mean?" "He's crucial to Tamura's plans." Izuku's smile faded into a serious expression. "Dad, you do realize that I can involve Mom if I need to, right? Besides, just copy the quirk and put it in a Nomu. Just not him, okay? I need him. What's more important? A plan that Tamura has or my plan that I've worked on for years? He was a coincidence, but now he's important, and I need him to make my love happier. I want you to think about it and let me know tomorrow." All for One watched as his son was returned to the bar by the doctor's Nomu, named Johnny. He considered his options, whether to restore Kurogiri to his human form and face the inevitable outburst from Tamura, or to leave him as he was and risk Inko's anger. Ultimately, he decided, "Doctor, begin the process to revert Kurogiri back to a human." It was a straightforward choice. Despite his feelings for Inko, he knew she could be formidable. The doctor, however, was conflicted. As the great All for One, the symbol of evil, he found it hard to submit to the wishes of a single woman and child. Yet, he proceeded with the task of fixing Kurogiri, reminding himself that he was still bound to serve All for One. Meanwhile, Izuku joyfully skipped home, excited to share with his mother the gift he planned for his crush. Inko listened with a smile, reflecting on her own childhood and hoping Izuku would find a friend like she had in Mitsuki. "So, honey, have you made any progress in finding a friend?" she asked. Izuku frowned and shook his head. No one in my class seems to understand what I'm trying to do. I'm thinking of looking in general studies. But one of my classmates did ask if I could help get his dad, Endeavor, arrested." Inko was pleased that her son was trying to help others. "And what did you say, Izuku?" she inquired. He shrugged. "I told him I'd think about it. I could gather confessions from him, his siblings, and his mother, along with some video evidence of the abuse." He began to mumble, a habit he had when he felt comfortable. Inko listened intently, knowing that while others might find his mumbling odd, she appreciated his thoughts. Still, she worried about his lack of friends to share these concerns with. "Maybe you could help him, and once you do, just ask if you're friends. If he says no, then ask him again," she suggested. Izuku pondered this and nodded. "Yeah, thanks, Mom. I see where I get my planning skills from." "Now, what if he says no?" He started mumbling again, and Inko offered her input only when necessary. "Maybe just leave it at that and look for someone else. But for now, focus on protecting your crush. You need to find a way to gather evidence against that Hisashi guy, right? If you can get something that could cost him his job, it might help." Izuku's eyes brightened. "Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mom. I have a plan. I'll be out late tonight." He beamed, his innocent smile revealing his determination. Inko understood that he was planning something bold, but she had faith in him. Later that evening, Izuku returned home and went straight to his computer. He transferred 2 images and edited them until they appeared authentic. One image depicted Hisashi in a compromising position, with Izuku cleverly replacing his crush with one of his classmates. He chose Yaoyorozu, knowing that her sleeping face would serve his purpose well. While he didn't have feelings for her, he recognized the potential for leverage. The edited image suggested that Hisashi had harmed a student, and Izuku printed it out, handling it carefully with gloves. He sent it anonymously to the police, ensuring it was untraceable. Now, he just had to wait for the consequences to unfold, confident that his plan would work. Izuku discovered something important about himself: he was not a patient person, especially when it came to waiting for someone to face consequences for their actions. He decided to take matters into his own hands, recalling how he had previously gotten All Might arrested. He realized that catching someone in the act of wrongdoing could be effective, and present Mike seemed to fit the bill. Izuku had learned through the cameras he installed in Mick's apartment that Hisashi had a secret room dedicated to his current students, including some from Class 1B. The next day, as Izuku walked to school, he spoke with his friends at the gate, letting them know he might be a bit late to class and to inform Aizawa not to worry because he needed to discuss an English assignment with Mike. His friends accepted this without question, and Izuku made his way to the teacher's lounge, where he found Yamada and Nizu. After knocking, Nizu invited him in. Izuku hesitated before asking if he could speak with Mike privately. Nizu exchanged a knowing look with Hisashi, who smiled and encouraged Izuku to share what was on his mind in a more private setting. They moved to an empty meeting room, where Izuku felt the pressure of the moment. He fidgeted nervously, aware of Mick's preference for shy students, but he was determined to change that dynamic. Present Mike leaned in closer, prompting Izuku to voice his concerns. Izuku stammered, mentioning that he had noticed Mike looking at him during lectures. Mike seemed to hold his breath, and when he responded, his demeanor shifted. He leaned in closer, and Izuku felt a mix of anxiety and determination. Just as Mike was about to say something, the door swung open, revealing Aizawa, who immediately noticed Mick's inappropriate behavior. Aizawa's protective instincts kicked in as he confronted Hisashi about his actions. Izuku quickly moved behind Aizawa, feeling safe in his presence. Aizawa's anger was palpable as he questioned Mick's intentions, especially given Izuku's past experiences. Izuku, with tears in his eyes, explained what had happened, and Aizawa decided to review the security footage to get to the bottom of the situation. After watching the footage, Aizawa took decisive action, wrapping Hisashi in his capture weapon and vowing to ensure he faced the consequences of his actions. The situation weighed heavily on everyone involved, especially for Izuku, who felt a mix of relief and concern for his classmates. As they waited for the authorities, Aizawa remained by Izuku's side, offering support until Inko arrived. She expressed her worry for her son, suggesting that perhaps transferring schools would be safer. Izuku, however, insisted that he wanted to stay, knowing that Aizawa would always be there to protect him. He felt reassured by Aizawa's presence, even as his mother reminded him of the dangers he faced. Inko's concern was evident, but Izuku was determined to stay where he felt supported, believing that with Aizawa's help, he could navigate the challenges ahead. "He keeps me safe, Mom," Inko frowned. "I'm going to set up a meeting with your principal to see if there's some sort of exchange program I can put you in, nothing permanent, just so you can see if Ketsubatsu is safer." Izuku let his tears build up, and Aizawa noticed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Kid, it's your mom's choice. I'm sorry I can't help you." Izuku hugged Aizawa, letting his emotions flow. This whole argument was a ruse. His mom was just helping him get closer to Ms. Joke, or Fukukado Emi, so that he could distance her from his feelings. After all, she had the audacity to flirt with the one he cared for, and he felt she needed to be removed from the picture. Everything he did was for the sake of his love. He'd do anything to win Aizawa's affection. Once that ordeal was over, all students of Mike were sent home, and after a week, they received an email about heightened security and a dorm system being implemented. Now, he actually needed to find a friend to confide in about his plans, which wouldn't be easy. A few weeks later, Izuku moved into the dorms with his mother's hesitant approval, a mere formality for Shota and the rest of the staff. He began to interact more with the general studies students, bonding with some over their favorite heroes. However, one student, Shinso Hitoshi, seemed completely uninterested in engaging with him. Izuku believed they would get along well if he could just break through Shinso's defenses, but he had other priorities at the moment. He was busy assisting Todoroki with endeavor and training for the upcoming sports festival, having received the necessary clearance to participate. This was his chance to showcase everything he had learned and to impress his love in the process. He was determined to make it to the top 10 in the finals and capture their attention. Nothing would stop him, not even the fact that he'd be temporarily transferred to Ketsubutsu Academy after the sports festival. The day of the sports festival arrived, and Izuku was filled with excitement, especially since Aizawa had fully healed. He was thriving, to say the least. With any distractions out of the way, he just needed to navigate Ms. Joke. He had once felt intimidated by Midnight, but he realized she had a playful nature, so he treated her much nicer than Shota's other friends. He knew she had a fondness for some of her students, which made her a potential ally for relationship advice. He had planned to ask her during their lunch break, as he believed she could help him understand how to win Shota's affection. As Izuku stood in front of an entire arena, he felt a wave of terror wash over him. International television was not his favorite thing. He couldn't help but chuckle when Bakugo was called to give the student pledge. It was bound to be entertaining. "I just wanna say, I'm gonna win," Bakugo declared, and Izuku thought that would surely lead to some chaos. At least Bakugo was being honest for once. Izuku watched as Bakugo walked past him to Kirishima, who immediately began scolding him for the pledge. When Midnight announced the first round, Izuku's heart sank. An obstacle course? He couldn't believe it. With so many kids trying to qualify, it didn't seem safe. He flashed his typical innocent smile at the cameras, hoping that his love was watching. He figured he could always pretend he was smiling at his mom at home. Feeling hot and slightly out of breath due to not being able to train, he hated the way his muscles felt weaker than they could have been. He could sense Shota's pitying gaze as he and Midnight commentated. But he wouldn't give up. By the time he reached the minefield, he decided to dig a hole and fill it with the mines to propel himself forward, hoping that Shota would recognize his effort. To his surprise, it worked better than he expected. The satisfaction of using Bakugo as a stepping stone was worth it. He sprinted across the finish line, trying to suppress a manic smile. Out of breath and feeling unwell from overexertion, he fell to his knees. Bakugo glared at him as he crossed the finish line in third place. "UDMN nerd!" Bakugo shouted, charging at him and grabbing him by the collar, shaking him. This only made Izuku feel worse, and he couldn't hold it back any longer. He pushed Bakugo away and fell to the ground, feeling sick. One of the supervising teachers rushed over to help him to Recovery Girl's office while another teacher scolded Bakugo. Through his watery eyes, he couldn't make out the teachers' faces, but the reassuring voice sounded like Snipe, while Hound Dog was clearly reprimanding Bakugo for his actions. After a few minutes of reassurance from Snipe and Recovery Girl, and later Aizawa himself, Izuku was allowed to compete in the second round, with the condition that he would drop out if he felt even slightly unwell. He hated that condition but pushed through and joined his classmates as they explained the next game objective. Finding a team would be a challenge, so he approached a general studies student with wild lavender hair who had called out Bakugo earlier in the week. "Hey, wanna be on a team?" he asked, smiling at the boy, who scrutinized him. "You're in first place and didn't use any quirk during the first round. What's up with that?" Izuku rubbed the back of his neck nervously. Oh, well, that's a long story. But what you should take away from this is, I'm saving it for the third round." The lavender-haired boy, who introduced himself as Shinso Hitoshi, nodded in response. "Alright then. I guess I'll save telling you my quirk too, fair is fair." Izuku introduced himself as Midoriya Izuku and explained that he already had a plan. They decided to ask Tokoyami to join, and soon after, a girl with bubblegum pink hair ran up, claiming she was joining their group without waiting for their approval. They all accepted her into the team, and Izuku chose to ignore the disappointed look from Uraraka, who seemed upset he hadn't chosen her. Throughout the second round, they focused on avoiding other teams until they were rushed by Bakugo and Todoroki's teams at the very end. They still managed to make it to the final round. Izuku knew he needed to get noticed by Aizawa now. Although Aizawa had already noticed him, he wondered what good that did if he didn't feel a connection. This was why he needed to talk to Midnight. He found her talking to Aizawa and decided to approach her. "MMS Midnight. Could I maybe speak to you in private, please? He asked, fidgeting nervously. Aizawa looked at him with concern. Kid, are you alright? Izuku quickly nodded. Yes, Aizawa-sensei, I'm okay, I just needed to speak. With Ms. Midnight. Namiri smiled and agreed to talk with him. They moved to a private meeting room, and she asked, So, Midoriya-kun, how can I help you? I'm honestly surprised you came to me instead of Shota. Izuku nodded nervously. Well, you have a lot more experience with what I need help with. He doesn't seem to understand it all too well. Midnight nodded. So, what exactly is it that I have more experience in? Izuku swallowed nervously. Well, you see, I have this. I really like this guy, and I want to get him to notice me, but he's older than I am. Midnight nodded in understanding. Well, is this guy well versed in flirting to the point where he'd know that you're flirting with him? Izuku quickly shook his head. And no, ma'am. Midnight sighed. So you're trying to get the romantic attention of a brick wall. And you really like this guy? Izuku nodded again. More than anything. I see. Well, can you be upfront with him? Izuku shook his head. I don't think he'd take it well that way, but I'm tired of waiting. I don't know what I should do. He looked at the ground with a frown, and she reached out from across the table to rub his shoulder gently. Hey, it's alright. How much older is this guy? Because if it's some really old dude, I'm going to have to ask you to stop and think about why you like him some more. Izuku shook his head. No, he's under the age of that's as much as I'm willing to tell you. Midnight nodded. And he's not abusing you in any way, shape, or form. Goodness, no. He doesn't even know I like him, and he'd never hurt me like that. He knows what I've been through, and all he wants is to protect me from anyone else that might harm me. Midnight smiled. Alright, Midoriya-kun, I believe you. How about we calm down though? Izuku took a breath and nodded. Sorry, Ms. Midnight, I just don't want anything to happen to him. He saved me from myself before, and I don't want him to get locked up like All Might and Present Mike. Midnight nodded. It's alright, but I would like to know if this mystery man is a teacher. Izuku stared at the ground. Well, I know you're not opposed to the idea because you have your own students that I know you like. And yeah. He is. She grinned widely. It's Shota, isn't it? If you really want help flirting with him, then I can help you. Oh, I'm sure he already thinks you're adorable, so we can improve on that. I know his tastes, and you nearly fit them to a T. He likes them innocent and cute, but if you start showing even a bit of skin, then he'll go absolutely wild. Maybe try wearing a skirt one day, one that's just slightly under the allowed length for dress code. I'll write you a pass to wear the girl's uniform. Izuku blinked in surprise and nodded along. Alright, thank you for the help, Ms. Midnight. He blushed nervously. Why you won't tell anyone, right? He knew she wouldn't, but it never hurt to make sure. Midnight immediately nodded. Of course I won't tell anyone. Sho is always super lonely, so maybe if he finds someone that will love him, then he'll actually be happy for the first time since we went to UA. I don't think he was truly happy with Hisashi. I haven't heard him laugh in years. Izuku nodded slowly. Do you think you could just try to influence him so that he likes me when I actually tell him I like him? Midnight nodded, smiling at him softly. Then she looked at her phone. You should hurry and eat lunch before the 1v1 battles start. Go knock 'em dead, little one. She went back into the room they had just left, and Izuku went to the cafeteria. Izuku skipped into the cafeteria in a chipper mood, sitting with Shinso, who was surprised to see him plopping down in the seat across from him. Hi, Shinso-kun. The lavender-haired boy raised an eyebrow. Why are you so happy? We barely passed the second round. Tokoyami had to save our sorry selves. Izuku's smile turned into a frown. Yeah, but at least we passed. I'll tell you why I was so happy before you ruin my mood later, but right now. What are you eating, and can I have some? Shinso rolled his eyes. It's shrimp stir-fry, and no. You cannot have any. He smacked Midoriya's hand that was reaching for a piece of shrimp. If you're hungry, then go to the lunch line and get some food. Izuku pouted but ran off to the lunch line, coming back a few minutes later with pork cutlet, quickly eating his food. You know, Shinso-san, I like you. You don't take nonsense from anyone. You're my friend now. Shinso looked at him, surprised. I don't want any friends, that's not what I'm at this school for. Izuku shrugged. Too bad, you're my friend now. The final round was starting, and Izuku was looking at the board to see who he'd be up against first, his new friend, Shinso Hitoshi. Great. He really hoped that he didn't have to use his quirk on him, mostly because the boy didn't seem to have any sort of quirk to use to strengthen himself in a fight. He didn't want to hurt him within the first hour of their friendship. It could wait until next year when they were sparring, and Izuku accidentally lost control. He was so focused on his thoughts that he didn't hear a familiar loud blonde stomp up behind him until he was grabbed by the collar of his shirt. Having been lifted off the ground, he started sputtering, Keikaken. What did I do this time? Katsuki growled. You think you're better than me? All because you got through the first 2 rounds without using your quirk. Izuku quickly shook his head. And no. Of course not, there's no way I'd ever be better than you, Kaken. We both know that. Midoriya tried to hide the way he shook with genuine fear. Ever since the incident with All Might, he was terrified of the blonde. He was used to loud blonde's antics, but he'd dealt with Katsuki for years now. He should be used to the yelling and the swearing, but even after all this time, he was more afraid of the blonde than he'd ever been. He nearly started crying. Izuku couldn't hear Katsuki's yelling over the blood rushing in his ears. He gripped Katsuki's wrists for dear life but couldn't manage to ground himself. That was until he heard the familiar voice of the man who'd saved him from All Might. Shota was now holding him in his arms, trying to get him to relax without touching him too much in spots that might have triggered him. It's all right, I'm here. I won't let him hurt you. None of them will hurt you again. I promise. Izuku clung to the older man as soon as he heard his voice. Katsuki had been taken away from Midoriya so the boy could calm down easier. Aizawa sensei. Aizawa let Izuku sob into his chest, running his fingers through his hair gently, as if he were petting a cat. It's all right, you're safe. Izuku just nodded into Aizawa's chest and sniffled, not even remotely thinking about letting go of him. Izuku took a deep breath and slowly moved away from Shota, still holding onto him but no longer hugging him. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa nodded, expressing concern. I don't know if you should continue in the festival, especially if you end up fighting Bakugo. Izuku frowned, determination in his voice. No. I need to prove that I belong in the hero course. I can't stand how weak I feel, Aizawa-sensei. I need to show everyone that I'm strong, or they'll just start bullying me. Tears began to run down his face again. Shota gently wiped a tear away. Do you think they'll bully you like they did at your last school? Izuku slowly nodded. They will, I know they will. Aizawa shook his head. They want to be heroes, just like you do. If they bully you, then they don't deserve to be heroes, and I don't plan on wasting any more time with them. Izuku nodded slowly, gratitude evident in his expression. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei, for everything. He hugged Aizawa tightly just as Midnight walked in. Sorry, Sho, I just wanted to make sure our little green bean was okay. Aizawa nodded, and Izuku pulled away from the hug. I'm okay, Ms. Midnight. Thank you for checking. Izuku smiled at Namiri, who informed him that his class was waiting for him in the stands. Oh, and your fight with Shinso Hitoshi has been pushed back to the last fight of round 1. Izuku nodded, realizing he was still sitting in Aizawa's lap, unable to move because Shota was still holding him there. Midnight smiled. Shota, I think you might need to let him go so he can sit with his class. Or he could sit in the commentary box with us. Shota narrowed his eyes at Midnight, holding Izuku tighter protectively. I don't trust your tone. Nemuri rolled her eyes. Shota, we both know I only like people who identify as women. Shota's grip tightened a bit more. And Hisashi said he only liked adults. Izuku squeaked, Aizawa-sensei. Too tight. Aizawa immediately loosened his hold slightly. I'm sorry, I didn't hurt you, did I? He quickly checked Izuku for any signs of discomfort. I am okay, Aizawa-sensei. You didn't hurt me. He gave Aizawa his most innocent smile, and Shota nodded, patting his head and letting him go. Izuku stood up and smiled at Aizawa. Thank you for helping me, Aizawa-sensei. I should get back to the class now. He bowed to Kayama and left the room to go to the stands where Ida, Uraraka, and Tsu were waiting for him. Hey, guys. He sat with them, his face still a bit red and his eyes likely puffy from crying. Are you feeling any better, Deku? Uraraka asked, and he flinched slightly at the nickname. Yeah, I'm feeling better now. Aizawa-sensei helped me. Tsu looked at him, surprised. I was pretty surprised how quickly he came to your rescue, Midoriya. Izuku nodded. Yeah, I'm always surprised by that too. I don't know how he always knows when I'm in trouble. I kind of feel bad about it. He looked down sadly. Ida made his usual hand-chopping motion. There's no need to be upset over our teacher doing his job of protecting us. Izuku nodded and sat between Ida and Tsu, much to Uraraka's dismay. He talked with them about his strategy for the fight since he didn't know Shinso's quirk. As they watched Todoroki fight Zero, which ended quickly with a giant wall of ice covering half the stadium, Izuku felt sympathy for Zero after the quick defeat. They all chatted while waiting for the ice to thaw, and once it finally did, it was time for Kaminari and Shiozaki's fight. Izuku took notes on the vine-haired girl's quirk and brainstormed ideas on how to get Denki to leave him alone. He had no interest in the school pool, yet Denki kept pestering him about it. How did he and that grape even find out where he lived? That felt like stalking. Maybe he could tell Aizawa about it. Kaminari's fight ended quickly too, with Shiozaki swiftly grabbing him with her hair. After that, Ida went to the waiting room to prepare for his match, and Uraraka quickly took his seat next to Izuku, seemingly trying to get his attention. So, Deku, Ida against that girl who teamed up with you, what was her name again? Hatsum. Izuku flinched at the nickname again but nodded. Yeah, Hatsum Mei. She's in the support course, and I have a feeling I know how this is going to go. He watched the lengthy fight, which felt more like a product promotion than a competition. Bored, Izuku eventually told Uraraka he was going to the bathroom. On his way to the cafeteria, he literally ran into Aizawa. So sorry, Aizawa-sensei. He bowed in apology, looking up at Aizawa from his bow. I was just headed to the bathroom. He stood up properly, still looking up at him. Aizawa nodded. Right, sorry Midoriya. Are you alright? Izuku nodded. Yes sir. I'm feeling much better. He smiled at Aizawa, who nodded and patted his head gently. Good. Let me know if you feel another panic attack coming on. Izuku quickly nodded. Yes sir. He spoke with a slight sing-song voice. Aizawa nodded, burying his face in his capture weapon before walking away after patting Izuku's head again gently. Midoriya happily went down the hall to the bathroom to relax without Uraraka bothering him. When he came out, he learned that Mina had won her fight against Aoyama relatively quickly. Now Tokoyami and Yaoyorozu were fighting, and it looked like Yaoyorozu was struggling to keep up. He took a seat between Ida and Zero, discussing his thoughts on Tokoyami's strategy. Tokoyami won, much to Yaoyorozu's dismay, and the next battle began shortly after. The pairing of Tetsu and Kirishima seemed ill-conceived, as they were evenly matched. The fight lasted about half an hour before they knocked each other out simultaneously, leading to a tie that would be resolved after Midoriya and Shinso's fight. Uraraka left the stands to go to the waiting room. Bakugo had been allowed to continue in the rounds but would face heavy consequences for his earlier actions against Izuku, so he left for his waiting room as well. Deku watched in anticipation as the two fought for what seemed like a handful of minutes, but in reality, it lasted for an hour before Bakugo emerged victorious. Izuku began to sweat. He knew that if he had to fight Bakugo, he would likely lose. He glanced at Katsuki and said, I need to be right back. He excused himself from sitting next to Ida and Shoto, heading to the waiting room. Ida received a call just as Izuku left, prompting him to leave abruptly. Izuku figured it was something personal and didn't question him about it. In the waiting room, Izuku took deep breaths. He would have to face his friend before he could even tell his mother that they were friends. He tried to formulate a game plan, but it was harder than usual. He didn't truly want to hurt Shinso, but he needed to be prepared for anything. He almost started to spiral into anxiety until he heard it was time for him to go out. Nervously, Izuku walked onto the arena, making eye contact with Hitoshi, who stood across from him, waiting for Cementos to announce the start. As soon as they began, Shinso started taunting Uraraka and Tokoyami. Izuku frowned, recognizing the bait but deciding to play along. Everyone thought he wanted to protect his friends above all else. Don't you dare talk about them like that, Shinso, he shouted, feeling as if he lost control of his body. It was strange. He struggled to regain control when he noticed silhouettes of people in front of him. Whatever he saw activated his quirk in just his index finger, creating a shock that allowed him to regain control. Once he was back in control, he focused on fighting Shinso, ignoring everything he said. They exchanged blows until Izuku executed an over-the-shoulder throw, causing Shinso's foot to go out of bounds. He won. He couldn't believe it worked. Once he snapped out of it, he helped Shinso up. No hard feelings, Shinso. I just needed to win. I have someone important watching. Shinso nodded and replied, I'll beat you next time, okay? Izuku happily agreed, we'll see. But then he froze. Shinso had brainwashed him again. Shinso began to laugh before finally releasing his hold on Izuku's mind. Izuku pouted, you JRK. Shinso wiped away a tear and started walking with him to Recovery Girl's office. You need to stop letting your guard down. Izuku shook his head, you have no idea. I'll tell you about it later. Shinso looked confused. What do you mean? Izuku just smiled and entered Recovery Girl's office. Hi, Recovery Girl. I tried not to overdo it, and I'm sure my finger will be alright. He listened to her lecture about being more careful and not using his quirk carelessly. Izuku nodded along, trying not to seem bored. After she bandaged his finger, he was on his way. He and Shinso found a private spot so Izuku could share his admiration for Aizawa and his plans. Shinso blinked and nodded, oh, alright then. I don't really care as long as you don't get in my way of being a hero. Izuku beamed. Really? Mom's going to be so happy I made a friend. He practically vibrated with excitement. Shinso looked a bit concerned. You don't have many actual friends, do you? Izuku quickly shook his head. You're my first one. Isn't that great? He dragged Shinso to sit with his class, positioning himself between Shinso and Shoto, while Uraraka glared at Shinso from her seat. Both Izuku and Shinso ignored her. Later, Deku's fight with Shoto followed Kirishima and Tetsu's tiebreaker. Izuku felt nervous and rambled to Shinso about different battle strategies. Then Shinso suggested a brilliant idea, get into Shoto's head and target his weak spots. It seemed easy, but it could backfire as well. When he was called to fight Shoto, he hoped Aizawa would watch closely, as this was his way of proving he was worthy of being with Shota. He stepped onto the cement platform, staring Todoroki in the eyes. He knew the boy's weaknesses, having been told about them. Izuku had no qualms about exploiting them while pretending to help his classmate. As they took their fighting stances, Cementos signaled for them to start. Shoto immediately shot a spike of ice at him, which Izuku shattered with a flick of his finger. Another spike came, and he did the same. Soon, he would run out of fingers. He heard someone shout something to Shoto from the stands. It was Endeavor. Izuku realized he had made a mistake by giving evidence of Enji Todoroki's abuse to the police instead of a news outlet. Naturally, the man had paid his way to freedom. Deku planned to spread the evidence everywhere next, but for now, he glanced at Endeavor and then at Shoto. It's not his quirk, Todoroki. That's your fire. Your ice. Not your father's or your mother's. It's your quirk. Not his. Suddenly, the arena was engulfed in flames. Todoroki shot flames at him just as Izuku flicked his already injured finger. Cementos created thick blocks of cement between them, but the temperature change and air pressure were too much, causing a massive explosion. Deku flew out of bounds and lost consciousness. When he woke up in Recovery Girl's office, Aizawa was there, glaring at him for his recklessness. Problem child. You can't keep destroying your body like this. Izuku looked down at his broken arms. I know, sir. But how was I going to prove that I wasn't weak to the villains? Or to you? I don't want you to expel me because I'm useless and have no potential. Aizawa sighed, wondering what he was getting into this school year. Kid. You have potential, but you need to HRNSS it better. Izuku nodded slowly, and then there were loud, rapid knocks at the door. Recovery Girl answered it, and his friends along with Shinso walked in, Shinso being the last one to enter. Izuku perked up when the lavender-haired boy entered the room, prompting a unique expression from Aizawa that Izuku had never seen before. He chose to ignore it as everyone around him asked if he was alright. He nodded and chatted with them briefly until Recovery Girl shooed them out, muttering about rowdy kids. When Deku woke up again, he noticed jagged scars on his hands. He frowned as he listened to Recovery Girl's lecture, then accepted some gummies before being sent on his way with Aizawa. As they made their way to the stands, Aizawa checked to ensure Izuku was comfortable on his crutch before asking, "So, was that kid with the purple hair your boyfriend?" Izuku laughed, "Of course not, Aizawa-sensei. His name is Shinso Hitoshi, he's in general studies. We're just friends. Besides, while he might be my type physically, I only have eyes for one specific guy." Aizawa raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. "Well, I'm glad you're making more friends, and he seems like a good influence." Izuku continued, "Yeah, he wants to transfer to the hero course, but I think he needs more muscle and some support items to achieve his dream." He happily rambled about support items, and Aizawa listened intently. Izuku suggested that Aizawa could teach him how to use the capture weapon, and Aizawa considered it. Then Izuku expressed excitement about the possibility of having his only friend in his class one day, which concerned Shota. "Kid, what do you mean by only friend? I thought you were friends with Ida, Azui, Uraraka, and Todoroki." Izuku froze. Oh, I meant only friend as in my only friend that's not in 1A. Shota nodded, still finding the wording odd. Izuku smiled as they approached the door to the student stands. "Are you going back to the commentary booth?" Aizawa shook his head. "Not for a little while. I'm worried about you, problem child." Izuku giggled, "You sounded so pained when saying that." Aizawa smirked slightly, pleased to see Izuku back to his cheerful self. "I'll be monitoring you and the other students for about 30 minutes to make sure Bakugo doesn't start anything again." Izuku nodded slowly, "Alright, so you'll be sitting in the top row?" Shota confirmed and held the door open for Izuku, ensuring he could navigate the steps safely before watching him closely from the top. Shinso helped Izuku to his seat, nudging him gently and chuckling as he muttered something that made Izuku roll his eyes and playfully shove him. Aizawa caught a faint, "Shut up, stupid, you're too loud." Shinso laughed, and Aizawa noticed Uraraka glaring at him, which was unusual for her. He made a mental note to ask her about her apparent animosity toward the general studies student later. Observing the class, he questioned why he felt so protective over Izuku interacting with Shinso. He shook off the thought, focusing on the students to avoid missing anything important. Kaminari approached Midoriya, who flinched slightly at the sight of him. Kaminari began asking about a pool, and Izuku shook his head, curling into Shinso's side. Then Aizawa heard something that stirred his irritation. Kaminari looked between Izuku and Shinso and asked, "Oh, is this your boyfriend, Deku?" Izuku sat up, frantically shaking his head. Aizawa felt a sense of relief at Izuku's insistence that they weren't dating. He wondered why he couldn't maintain his usual composure like he had a few months ago. Perhaps he just needed a break. He decided to return to the booth with Midnight. Upon his return, Midnight smiled at him, "So how's the adorable little bean? Did surgery go well?" Aizawa nodded stiffly, trying to appear indifferent. "That's good. I haven't seen you so worried since you found him with All Might. Getting possessive, are we?" Aizawa looked at her in confusion. "What are you talking about, Kayama?" She grinned, "Come on, Shota, we both know you've developed a bit of favoritism for the boy. And there's nothing wrong with that." Aizawa frowned. "Of course there is. I should be indifferent about all my students. I should treat them all equally." Midnight raised an eyebrow. "But isn't he a special case? He gets in trouble so much, especially with his teachers wanting to help him. Although there's really nothing wrong with that as long as it's appropriate. You know Nizu's rules better than any of us, Shota." Aizawa shook his head. "The kid's got enough issues. He doesn't need you making him think I have some sort of crush on him." Midnight sighed. "Fine, but you and I both know that shoving your feelings down never helps." Aizawa sighed and shook his head, sitting in his seat. "Namuri, just because you have your little crushes on your students doesn't mean I have one on mine. Whatever you say, Shota. I just wish you'd realize it instead of making that poor boy suffer." His gaze snapped to Midnight. "What do you mean suffer?" She groaned, "You're really oblivious for someone who's supposed to be aware of his surroundings all the time. The poor boy just wants to be close to you, and you're trying to keep him away from his safe person." Aizawa sighed and rubbed his face. "Namuri, you know I don't want to do that to a trauma victim, but what if he gets too attached?" She rolled her eyes. "Is he getting too attached, or is it you, Shota?" She turned away to provide commentary for the next fight, leaving Aizawa to ponder her words. Meanwhile, Izuku chatted with Shinso, unaware of how Midnight was helping him. He ended up discussing his plans to get Endeavor arrested. Though he wasn't overly passionate about it, Midoriya was a man of his word. Shoto, sitting beside him, listened intently, nodding along with the parts he approved of. Izuku watched the rest of the round 2 fights, jotting notes in his notebook. He realized he hadn't heard Aizawa comment in a while and began mumbling his thoughts on the matter, only to catch himself and fall silent. "I'll be right back, Shinso," Izuku said before getting up and heading to the commentary booth door, knocking gently. Shota answered the door. "Midoriya, are you all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Izuku nodded, "Yeah, I just got worried about you. You weren't making any comments, and Ms. Midnight wasn't asking for your commentary either." Aizawa smiled softly and placed a hand on Izuku's head. "I'm all right, Midoriya." Izuku continued, "Okay, Aizawa-sensei. But can I stay up here with you for a bit? Kaminari keeps bothering me about going to the pool and asking if Shinso and I are dating." Shota nodded. "Of course. He hasn't been bothering you in any other ways, right?" Izuku shook his head, "He hasn't, but my Neta has been staring at me in the changing rooms." Aizawa straightened up, determination in his eyes. "I'll see to it that he gets punished accordingly, Midoriya." Izuku nodded, and Midnight shot Shota a knowing look, prompting him to glare at her. Namiri laughed and returned to her commentary while Shota fetched a chair for Izuku. As the current fight ended, Kayama turned to Izuku. "He's gone now, you can tell me how I can help you win him over." Midoriya smiled brightly. "Well, for now, I think I'll just make sure my chair is pushed against his so I can cling to him while we watch Bakugo fight. I could ask him how everything in the room works to get him to talk." His excitement was palpable until Aizawa entered, prompting Izuku to calm down and put on his most innocent face. Hello, Aizawa-sensei." He took the chair from Aizawa and positioned it next to the older man's chair, sitting down. Shota settled into his chair, ignoring the fact that Izuku was pressed against his side. Izuku looked around the room with wonder. "So, Aizawa-sensei, how does the sound system work?" His smile was infectious as Shota explained, and Izuku hung on his every word. Once Shota finished, Izuku began asking Midnight a flurry of questions, causing Aizawa to frown slightly. From his angle, he caught a glimpse of Izuku's notebook, which was dedicated to the X-rated hero. It made him wonder if Izuku had one for him. He had never been asked as many questions as Midnight was receiving, which frustrated him. He tried to rationalize his feelings but couldn't understand why he felt this way. Just as he was about to convince himself to step back, Izuku turned to him with that smile. That smile made Aizawa sigh and return a lazy grin as Izuku continued with his questions. Soon, it was time for Bakugo's fight. The questions slowed as Izuku froze at the sound of one of Bakugo's explosions. He clung to Aizawa's side, visibly shaken. Aizawa placed a comforting hand on the boy's head. "It's all right, problem child. You're safe here." Izuku whimpered, not letting go of Aizawa's arm. Aizawa felt a rush of concern as he reassured him. "Do we need to be up here watching this the whole time?" "Kaken is really scary," Izuku asked, his voice trembling. Shota ruffled his hair. "No, Kayama's got the commentary, right?" Midnight nodded, sharing a knowing grin with Shota. He rolled his eyes and led Izuku out of the room. "How about we go to the cafeteria, kid?" Izuku nodded, still clinging to Aizawa's arm. He flinched at another explosion, allowing Shota to guide him to the cafeteria. As they entered, Izuku smiled at Shota. "What's your favorite food, Aizawa-sensei?" Shota shrugged. "I don't really have one, but if I had to pick, it would be sushi." Izuku nodded thoughtfully. "I think lunch rush is still here. Did you eat during lunch?" Shota questioned, knowing Izuku had a shorter lunch PRD. "I did, sir, but it was mostly just food I took from Shinso, and he didn't exactly want to share." Shota nodded in understanding. "Well, I'm pretty sure lunch rush is still here, and he wouldn't mind making you some food. What do you want to eat?" Izuku blinked, flustered. "Wait. You don't need to buy me food." "Nonsense. You're a teenager, I know from experience that you're always hungry, especially hero students. You burn too many calories for your age. But you really don't need to. What do you want to eat?" It's no longer a question. Izuku sighed, looking at the ground. "Well, katsudon is my favorite, but I'll only eat if you do." Aizawa nodded and headed toward lunch rush as Izuku found a quiet corner to sit in. While waiting, he overheard a conversation near the window. A familiar voice spoke first. "I don't know who you think you are, but you need to back off of Deku. He's mine. I saw him first." Izuku recognized the snort that followed. "Listen, Uraraka, he's not yours, and he's certainly not mine. We've told you this plenty of times. I know his type, and it's not you." Uraraka retorted, "If not you, then who does he like? What man got his attention?" Izuku could almost hear Shinso rolling his eyes. "Like I'd tell you. Now back off. I need to talk to him," and Midnight said he went to the cafeteria with Eraserhead because of Bakugo's explosions. Izuku sighed and texted Shinso. "Izuku, Hitoshi. Izuku is online. Izuku, if you interrupt my lunch, I will personally punch you in the sternum. Hitoshi is online. Hitoshi, noted. Izuku looked up from his phone as Aizawa approached. Hi Aizawa-sensei, need any help with anything? Shota shook his head, balancing two trays on his arms. He set the one with Katsudon in front of Izuku, whose face lit up. Thank you so much Aizawa-sensei. I'll pay you back soon, I swear. No you won't, kid. I don't want your money. Shota sat across from Izuku and ate his sushi while Izuku started rambling about Shinso, mentioning how Shinso wanted to get into the hero course. Though he was quiet, Aizawa listened, only half-focused as Izuku talked about that Shinso kid. Again. He noticed how Izuku's face brightened when he spoke about someone he admired. The sparkle in his eyes was evident as he shifted topics to heroes after discussing Shinso. Typically, Shota didn't enjoy hearing someone talk about him, but there was something different about this kid's enthusiasm. It was endearing, and he found himself quietly appreciating the attention, even if he couldn't quite understand why Izuku had an interest in him. For now, he decided to enjoy the moment.